Today we're looking at causes of the French and Indian War. Hello, welcome to the Daily Bellringer. Please don't forget to subscribe and take a look at the questions down in the description. So the French and Indian War is a largely ignored conflict in American history, yet its impact would shape the future of the North American continent and spark a world war. This war would pit the two major superpowers of the time, the British and the French, against one another. Fighting between these two nations was not uncommon. In fact, in the 70 years before the French and Indian War, there had been three major conflicts between the French and the British. Each of those conflicts had started in Europe and then made their way to North America. The French and Indian War was different in that it started in North America and then spread over to Europe, sparking what is known as the 7 Years' War. As far as the cause of the French and Indian War, it's rather simple, coming down to land and economic opportunity. The American colonies developed along the East Coast, basically hugging the Atlantic Ocean, remaining east of the Appalachian Mountains. And by the 1750s, there were more than 1 million colonists living in the American colonies, but the population was growing. And as the population grew, colonists wanted to expand west and get more land. The only issue was the French had already established New France west of the Appalachian Mountains. For years, the French had established trading routes connecting Canada to the Gulf of Mexico. Although New France had a much smaller population of only 60,000, and most of them living in Canada, they had constructed several forts to protect these trading routes further south and had the allegiance of several Native American tribes in the region. By the 1740s, many English traders began trading in the Ohio River Valley, and by the 1750s, English settlers began encroaching into New France. Many Englishmen began claiming territory and began making plans to expand further west. One area that became very sought after was the area around present-day Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. It is here that the Allegheny and the Monongahela rivers converge to create the Ohio River that flows west of the Mississippi River. Both Britain and France recognized the strategic importance of controlling this area known as the Forks. In early 1754, the British rushed to build a fort at the Forks, but a large force of French Canadians arrived and the British fled. The French then built Fort Duquesne, which would be an important site of future fighting. But now, just as this was happening, the governor of Virginia, which at the time Virginia encompassed a much larger area west than it does now, but the governor was concerned about English claims on some of this land in the Ohio River Valley made by Virginians. So he dispatched 100 men under the command of a young 22-year-old lieutenant colonel by the name of George Washington to march into the Ohio River Valley and protect those claims. Washington marched west towards the Forks. Well, you can probably guess what happens. The young and naive Washington, along with some Native American allies, attacked a small force of French troops on May 28, 1754, and that was the first shots of the French and Indian War. After the attack, Washington realized the French more than likely would dispatch troops from Fort Duquesne to counterattack. So Washington and his men built a small crude fort known as Fort Necessity at a place called Great Meadow. And on July 3rd, 1754, over 300 French-Canadian troops attacked and surrounded Washington, and Washington was forced to surrender. Now, although Washington surrendered, he was allowed to return to Virginia. And when he returned, he was a hero. I mean, this is really where Washington made a name for himself. The British celebrated George Washington because here was a colonist born in the colonies that had gone out and basically thrown the first punch in this conflict on the behalf of the British. So once the British get word of this back in England, of what had happened there at Great Meadow and Fort Necessity, they began organizing regular British forces to sail to America and start fighting the French. And by February of 1755, British regulars begin to arrive, and the French and Indian War really gets into full swing. So with that, hopefully you learned something, and thanks for watching.